and welcome to the ADHD Unfiltered podcast. We are co-hosts Cherry and Emma, and we share an unfiltered look into our lives with ADHD and how it impacts us and our guests.
We are both mums with raging ADHD who've created a podcast that is funny, relatable and safe, whilst also providing information that can hopefully help you to enjoy a better quality of life. Whether you're a parent or not, this podcast will have something for you.
We hope you stick around and enjoy the episode, and please also don't forget to give us a follow or subscribe, because it really helps us keep doing what we do.
Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome to episode 11.
I can't believe we're on episode 11.
I know. And it's another parenting with ADHD one, because we do look at the polls that, the answers that you select on the podcast episode polls of what kind of topics you'd like to hear next. And quite the majority was for ADHD, parenting with ADHD. There we are.
Yes, which is nice because it's a topic that obviously is very dear to our hearts, and initially was what we kind of set the podcast up in mind with was parenting, and then along the way we just rambled on and spoke about loads of different things, and it's become a podcast that hopefully everyone can enjoy, even if you're not a parent, and also for parents that aren't parents yet, so people that want to be parents. It's kind of, I've had a few people message saying how helpful it's been to kind of understand what they might have to navigate through, which is really nice. It's nice to have that feedback.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people who would like to become parents, but knowing that they've got ADHD related struggles, they kind of fear how it or what it might look like when you're a parent. And I do feel if you're kind of prepared or somewhat prepared of how your symptoms or how your difficulties might impact your parenting or your life, once you're a mum, I do think it can be helpful, especially because you can be on the lookout for additional kind of mental health difficulties or needing additional support, etc. Also, if you've started to work obviously on self-compassion, etc., that will be coming in handy.
Yes, definitely. And I think, there's so much that we can talk about when it comes to parenting with ADHD that can bring validation and support to people who might not know that there's even something wrong, which is kind of, or they know something's wrong, but they don't know quite what. And I hope that we can be kind of like a podcast that can help people have that awareness and finally have that light bulb moment.
Absolutely.
And, that's kind of what happened for me. Was I found out about ADHD, started looking into it, started seeing loads of content about it, and every video I was just like, oh my goodness. And the biggest breakthrough for me was realizing that I wasn't just this angry person that was just angry for no reason. I was just chronically overwhelmed and overstimulated. And I think that's a huge problem that parents face. And you don't need to have ADHD or be neurodivergent to be overstimulated. But we are kind of predisposed to be that way. We're on high alert a lot. We've got heightened senses. And when you pair, screaming, crying, tantrums, lots of touch, smells, it can be incredibly overwhelming.
Absolutely. And I do think, if you look at the way our brains work, so ADHD brains and also actually autistic brains are quite susceptible to being overstimulated, so experience sensory overload, and that's because of the way our brain is structured and the way it functions, because basically neurotypical brains are pretty good at passively, so automatically filtering through everything, kind of all sensory stimuli that is going on. So with sensory stimuli, I'm talking about, lights, sounds, touch, smells, literally all your senses, right? And neurotypical brains are great in very quickly prioritizing and organizing what you don't have to pay attention to, so kind of unnecessary stimuli, and it blocks that out. Whereas for neurodivergent brains, it's actually really difficult to do that at the point, and you have to consciously make an effort to try, for example, to focus on the speaker person and not to tune into, for example, a couple speaking a few tables behind, or
Yes.
not listening to the background music, etc., which in itself can be very exhausting. But then obviously, in general, you only have so much sensory stimuli that your brain can handle at a time, that your brain is able to process, etc. And, when that becomes too much, you get the sensory overload, the
Mhm.
overstimulation, where you feel tense, irritable, you feel dysregulated, you might snap, you might shout, you might even feel unwell, you might get a headache, you might,
Mhm.
there's all those kind of different symptoms. You could feel even dizzy, nauseous. I mean, there's a lot of symptoms that come with it. And
Yeah.
it's very real. It is researched that people with ADHD are way more prone to it. Same as obviously people with autism. And because obviously we don't really filter out unnecessary stimuli. So basically,
We're
your
just
brain
taking it
just
all
takes in
in.
everything. Yeah.
Oh, no wonder we're so exhausted. And
Yeah.
and you fit I for me, and we touched on this on the last episode, is so the letting your child cry it out, and there's that method which I have never been able to personally do, just
Mm,
morally couldn't, because I just find it, I'm like, I don't want you to cry or be upset
yeah.
ever. But there's the other level of it, of it's my body physically, my nervous system physically reacts to it as if it's an alarm bell ringing, and my whole body goes into fight or flight. And that still happens now when my children, if they hurt themselves, if they cry, if Max, my toddler, wakes in the night,
Yeah.
I am instantly in fight or flight and overstimulated already. Like, just that
And
sheer noise of a cry can do
yeah.
that.
And that's exactly actually what it is. So, overstimulation and sensory overload puts your body literally in a fight or flight sort of situation,
Yes.
and then obviously with that comes the, increased anxiety, stress, although funnily enough, stress can also often be a trigger for overstimulation.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so it's
It's just
it's
a
kind of like
cycle.
it's a cycle. It really is. And the problem that I used to find a lot of the times is when you look into into feeling overwhelmed as a mum, it was always the same sort of things, and I never kind of really resonated with it. Um,
Mm,
I constantly felt overwhelmed,
yeah.
to the point where I was like questioning whether I wasn't made to be a mum,
Oh,
because
yeah.
obviously I felt in my head like if I'm so overwhelmed, that means I can't handle what I'm being given, and that
Yeah.
means I probably shouldn't be a mum, despite that that's
Oh.
got nothing to do with that. And
Hmm.
now I know that it was just chronic overstimulation and
Yeah.
not having a way to reset my sensory system or sensory nervous system.
Mm.
And yeah, not being aware that overstimulation was even actually a thing.
That's it was for me. I had no idea. I hadn't really ever even heard that word when I was struggling. Obviously, I'd heard it, being overstimulated, but never it was something I thought of children, or when they're crazy at school or having a good time and then they get a bit overstimulated. I didn't think that that was
Mm,
something that I would be experiencing. And I had the same experience of you, of thinking, I mean, I said it multiple times. I'm not cut out to do this. This clearly isn't what I'm meant to do, because every day I'm chasing my own tail. I feel so overwhelmed by everything that
yeah.
this can't be what it feels like. And I would see other mums that were just in that beautiful phase of motherhood, of peaceful,
Mm,
and they just had everything just calm and collected. They were going out for days out, they were going swimming,
mm,
and I was just sat at home looking at my chaos and the mess that hadn't been tidied, and just sat thinking, what is wrong with me? Like, how can I
yeah.
not be doing what they're doing? And
Bundles of laundry
yes, and I,
yet to be put away.
dishes piled up that I hadn't done, and quite frankly, there probably was a bit of depression
Mm,
on top of ADHD and everything else. And I I just felt tense all of the time, and
yeah.
my body would feel painful from the tension that I'd be carrying all day.
Mm,
And it wasn't until, I mean, I got into crystals and crystal therapy and things like that,
mm,
and that's when I started to become more conscious of my body.
mm,
And when I would go for Reiki sessions, the person, a good friend of mine would say, "You're so hard to work on because you just don't relax. Your body doesn't let people in." And now I look at it and I'm like, of course, because I was in fight or flight for probably most of my life without realizing it. And I
Yeah.
used to think I was flawed. I thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And when you get into that cycle of trying to heal yourself, you then lose yourself in the process, because that's not something that you should heal. It's something that you should accommodate, and learn that overstimulation doesn't mean that you're an angry or bad person. It doesn't mean that you have to heal that part of yourself in the fact of getting rid of it. It just means that you can find ways to have a good life whilst knowing what it is. And just that awareness of knowing, okay, I'm overstimulated now, means I can
Yeah.
put things in place. And
And
with my children, I'm just like, give me 5 minutes, darling, because I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed now. And when you feel overwhelmed, and we're finally able to get to a place where we accommodate each other. And it took a
that's
long
really
time coming.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I also used to feel really, really guilty for not being able to be present or in the moment. I constantly felt like I was everywhere and nowhere at the
Oh,
same
yeah.
time. And it's difficult because I even find that sometimes, when you have such a hyperactive mind, it can be really, really hard to tune out all your thoughts because your
Oh,
thoughts are so distracting. I often get so distracted by my own thoughts. And then,
same.
I see something else, then that makes me be distracted. And because I saw
Trails off
something
that
else, I
thought.
think about something
Yeah.
else. And then I think about something else after thinking about something else. And then
Yes.
suddenly I am
Domino
there
effect.
getting up, whilst I'm in the middle of a play session trying to clean the windows. And
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and then my daughter would start to be obviously get frustrated, and she was like, "No, mummy, we were still playing, and
Yes.
I want you to come back playing. Stop it! Don't leave the room," and stuff like that. And I used to feel really, really bad about it because I was like, "Oh no, she's right. We were just playing, and I should be really more present. And what if she thinks that I'm not enjoying playing with her?"
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I get up in the middle, or I struggle to kind of do the repetitive play routines, the role play, when
Yeah.
we can do it once and I'm there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but after we've done it once and she wants to do it again, I'm like, yeah.
And I do
And
find
then
with children, once is never enough
no,
with things like that.
twice also not.
No, usually about 10 times, and
10
it's
times, yeah.
still quite not enough. But I think that's a huge point you've made there about playing with children.
Mm,
I know that myself and so many other people feel this shame and this guilt for finding it actually quite difficult to do. And
mm,
there's many reasons why, and to be totally honest, boredom is a
mm,
huge part for our ADHD brains. We crave reward systems for motivation, and sometimes playing a certain game or role playing can feel really tedious for us, and
mm.
we have to put that to one side to give them our full attention. But it's not easy, and it can be
No.
really overstimulating to do
Mm,
that too.
absolutely, absolutely. Especially if you have your own like little childhood memories of when you wished kind of you'd been played
Oh,
with more, and then
yeah.
you're trying to kind of heal that inner child by also giving your
Yes.
child more attention. But then at the same time, it can sometimes, and I feel bad for even saying it, but it can be sometimes painfully boring. I mean, there are
Yes.
some studies even that show that boredom in ADHD brains can literally make your whole brain switch off. But like properly, there were studies showing that it literally can make people fall asleep in class because it
Wow,
just literally is like a shutdown response. And
that's interesting.
yeah, and reading that those studies exist, and it's my brain basically being literally like painfully bored to the point of struggling to keeping awake
Yeah.
because of the way that my brain works and is structured, and all the neurotransmitters that are there, etc. I kind of felt a big sense of relief
Yeah.
because I was like, I thought there was something wrong with me feeling bored when playing with my child.
Yeah, like you're ungrateful. And I used to feel like, you
Yeah.
know
Like I'm not
I
enjoying their
remember.
company. I am. I
Yes,
really
and
am.
you know what gets to me is I I remember, like you say, I remember craving someone to play with me, and I would
Mm.
have exact ways that I wanted to play with my toys. My 5-year-old is exactly the same, and he'll say,
Yeah.
"Would you like to play with my Transformers with me, mummy?" And I'll be like, internally, like screaming, like,
Mm.
"No!" But I'll be like, "Yeah, of course, mate.
Mhm.
Who do you want to be, mummy? I'll be this. No, you can't be that one. Okay, so who would you like me to be? Whichever you want to be. Uh, okay, so this one. No. Okay, just tell me which one you want me to be, mate. And
I
then it
know.
gets to that point where he's like,
Oh,
you can't do that. They don't do that, mummy." And I'm like,
yes.
"Ooh."
Oh, my 4-year-old is the same. Like I used to have, I even remember, playing with my mum,
Yeah.
and I had these Barbies that I played with, and I think I was 8 years at the time, 7 or 8. And I had this exact play scenario. I was like, no, no, she says this now, and he says that.
Yes.
No, mummy, no, she says that. No, you're doing it wrong. You're
You're
doing
doing
it
it
wrong.
wrong.
And then she'd
Oh,
leave, and she'd be like, "Do you know what? I don't want to play with you anymore." And then she'd
yes.
leave, and I'd feel awful. And I was like,
Really
"No, I still
sad.
want you to play with me." And she was like, "No, I'm not going to play with you anymore."
Oh,
But,
I
and
had
then,
that same exact scenario.
but then my daughter is very similar in the sense that she'll be, we'll be playing hairdressers, right? And she'll be having all her cuddly toys there that
Yeah.
she has to hairdress. But then she gives me like pretty much all of the cuddly toys, and she was like, "Mummy, you are the babysitter. You have to entertain them. And I'm the hairdresser, okay? So I'm here and you're over there in the other corner of the room." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I sit in the other end of the room, and I'm like, And then she looks at me, and she looks at me and she was like, "No, mummy, you have to play with them. You have to entertain them." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I'll be there, being like, "Oh, I want to be there. I'm the hairdresser now. No, I
Yeah.
want to." And she looks at me. She's quite entertained then, but she doesn't play herself then. She's just standing
What?
watching me
Oh, like
play.
you're doing some sort of performance. The pressure of
and
that. I
then and
have
then
that
she'll come
too.
and then she'll come in. She was like, "No, actually, this one made a bad choice now." And I was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
no.
I thought they were fine." And she was like, "No, no, no, they made a bad choice, and now you have to tell them off." And I'm like, okay." And I'm like, "Oh, you made a bad choice. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
You shouldn't." And I was like, "What did he do?" She was like, "He hit him." I was like, "Okay, you
Oh.
should not hit. We don't talk with our hands." And she's like, "Oh, but now he's hitting you."
Oh my gosh, it
She's like,
escalates.
it
Sh-
escalates. And
es-
and then we'll be there literally, I kid you not. I've played this whole scenario about 15 times.
Wow. Oh gosh, I actually
Probably.
feel stressed thinking because
And
for
every
me
time she's
that
like, "Should we play hairdresser?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
yeah, internally just like, oh man. I mean, with Milo, we like to play like, so sometimes, for instance, when he was a bit younger, he used to like, if I pretended to be a dog and that I would be a crazy dog, so I'd have to be like woof woof woof. It sounded crazy, and then I would always accidentally take it too far because I'd get excitable
Yeah.
myself, and then I pretended. I don't know why. I think I just got really excited because I think our brains crave novelty, and I
Hmm.
pretended I took it up a level, forgetting that he had just turned 4. So I took it up a level and I was like, "Crazy dog's turning into a werewolf." And then I was like, "Oh," and he was like, "Mummy, no, I don't like-" and I was like, "Mate, I just put like that performance of a lifetime for you." And I had to be like, "Wow, that was a little bit too far." But I have to give myself that kind of novelty to stay engaged playing, but
Yes, so
it's
do
almost
I.
like he doesn't that's because it's not expected.
Yeah.
He really doesn't like that sometimes, so I have to like rein it in, because I don't want to
I get
traumatize him.
I get also really restless after like a while of playing the same thing. And
Yeah,
something that I found extremely helpful is because when I feel restless and kind of bored, my brain, like my hyperactivity just like ramps up a
yeah,
notch. And actually then playing like a little game of like chase or tickling or
yeah,
those sort of things, like a physically active game with her is
yes,
so freeing, because
yeah,
I feel like if I let my internalized hyperactivity out, so if I externalize my internalized hyperactivity gets less, and that's the
Yes.
painful one. The external one actually kind of makes me happy and like feel a bit light. The
Yeah.
internalized one is often the one that comes with, you know, kind of worries, anxieties, ruminating thoughts. And no,
Yeah.
it's not anxiety. Yes, I've dealt with anxiety for a long, long time, and there's
Mhm.
still some anxiety left, I'm not going to lie, absolutely. But you know, if you're having a brain that goes about 180 miles per hour with like multiple overlapping thought streams at all
Yeah.
times, you know, you're bound to have some sort of anxious thoughts in there popping in and out, and
Yeah.
it's about trying to handle those, obviously, and not, yeah.
Well, I think it as well, it's because if you think about it, our brains are overthinking and ruminating so much that you're inevitably going to come to conclusions that aren't very nice for your brain, and they're going to cause anxiety and stress.
Mm.
And you know, when people say, you know, oh, don't overthink, it's like, babes, if I could stop overthinking, I would have done that about 20 years ago. It
Do you know,
started from like very young.
do you know, I the other night I woke up in the middle of the night because so my daughter, I've kind of given up on the separate bedtime sleeping. We used to be very, very strict on not co-sleeping because we were very, very anxious. There was definitely some postpartum anxiety.
Oh
And
yeah.
after a while, you know, she got like, I think at around 18 months or something, she had croup. And the doctor recommended to sleep next to her. So we like
Yeah.
got the mattress next to her bed. And that's where the co-sleeping started. And we've not been able to get rid of it ever since. I mean, there's nothing in us that can just like kind of have those sleepless nights again when we're actually sleeping fine, she's
Well,
sleeping fine,
yeah.
you
Why
know.
change it if
And
it works?
absolutely. So anyway, before anyone gives me hate for that, please.
Oh yeah.
um
Please don't.
so now she comes over in the night, right? And because our bed isn't big enough, we just usually swap over. You know, one of us is
Yeah.
on co-sleeping duties. And so she came over, and suddenly she was like, in the middle of the night, I think I was like, I'm a light sleeper anyway, and people with ADHD are often light sleepers
Mm,
because we toss and turn. You know how our hyperactivity doesn't stop.
literally.
I also get restless leg syndrome. I mean, you know,
Me
the whole
too.
shebang. And
Yeah,
so it was
yeah.
tossing and turning, and then suddenly I hear her say, she was like, do you know those Halloween monsters? They have curled up toenails, sharp toes, and really long legs, and claws everywhere. And I was like, and
What?
I was like, no, sweetie, they don't exist. And she was like, oh, no, I think. And then she said, oh, I was just explaining to one of the nursery teachers, I wasn't saying the name, how to draw an elephant. So she's just completely swapped topics, and she was obviously sleep talking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was like wide awake because I was like, what if they exist?
Yeah, what the hell? Yeah, oh my God, I would be like turning the light on, like, I'm not going back to
And
sleep.
I looked at the time, and I was like, please not let it be like that time of the night, you
The
know.
witching hour.
And it
Don't tell
was
me it was.
3:33.
Mate, sage that out.
I even get goosebumps now. I couldn't sleep. I kid you not.
No, I don't
So
enjoy that.
I was,
That's
I was awake then, and I was like imagining, you know, I was like, we're fine, we're safe, you know, all good.
that's
And then,
terrifying what she explained.
and then,
Genuinely.
and then, I put some Candy Crush on.
It helps
Obviously,
everything.
great, yeah. And then I was like, okay, it's 4:30 now. I should probably get back to sleep. You know, I'm fine, all good. I've regulated myself again. And then I was there trying to fall asleep, and I went through in my head an entire episode of us on the podcast talking
Oh
about
my
speech and
God.
language therapy. I was like, and then I caught myself, and I was like, no, you should be trying to
Just
sleep.
I honestly, I find it
Basically,
hilarious because it's
we
just.
recorded a podcast already, but it was like 4:30 a.m. and it never
Do you know
actually
what
happened.
I do this though? I will be like walking to get my son from school, and I'll be mouthing out, like I'll be thinking of talking about something on the episode, and I'll be mouthing it out loud, so I look absolutely mental. I genuinely do wonder what people in my village think about me, because they're like, I often catch my facial expressions alone, and like, 9 times out of 10, my face looks like I have been smacked across the face because I'm thinking of something really intensely, and like, and
I'm
then I
doing
wonder
the
why people
same.
don't go hiya sometimes, and I'm like, probably because I look like I'm like gonna murder someone. I look intense.
I try to like think a lot of like kind of I try if I can to think of like positive scenarios and stuff. So sometimes
Yeah.
I'll be there just grinning,
Yeah.
just grinning to myself or nodding, and then
So
I wonder
manically
why
happy.
people approach me.
Yeah. Well, that's where this is what used to happen to me when I moved to the city. Obviously, I lived in the middle of nowhere before. I grew up on a farm. I had very limited interaction with like a lot of people. So when I moved to the city,
Mhm.
I was too polite. I would stop and smile at everyone I saw. And that included, I bought a book about Buddhism and monks from a lovely man, even though I was
Mhm.
already 10 minutes late to get to work. I couldn't not, because he was just so friendly. And I very quickly realized it's because I am smiling and I am engaging. And I learned,
Yeah.
don't do that. You will buy
Ah,
things. And it was like £15, this book. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't cheap.
no. I've done
But
that. I've done
but
that. I'm not gonna
it's just
lie.
easy to do it. I signed up
Ah,
to a dogs trust as well because I felt really sorry for the
I
dogs.
signed up once for a credit card. Um,
Yeah, done
but
that too.
just I just realized we went on a lovely tangent.
We did.
Love it.
We went on about
But
7 tangents.
yeah, but yeah, definitely. But I just wanted to say, if anyone isn't aware yet, to just circle back about overstimulation, it's what can actually be triggering overstimulation. So that kind of feeling of feeling ill, faint, nauseous, irritable, agitated. You can even have difficulties with sleeping actually when you're overstimulated. You can
Yeah,
have
I
emotional
get that really bad.
outbursts, restlessness, difficulty focusing, even up to panic attacks, by the way, which is mad. But
Interesting.
they can be triggered by loads of different things, but a few very common ones are loud noises or repetitive noises or
Mm,
multiple noises at once. And obviously, if you have several children, I don't know how you do it. Hats off to
I
you.
don't
I
know how
mean,
I do
Emma,
it,
I don't know.
Cherry.
Yeah, I don't know
I
how you
don't
do
know.
it.
I'm only just managing. I
And
think you just learn to tune it out, quite frankly.
mm,
You just learn to tune it out. Sometimes
like
I'm like, there's chaos running around me, and I'm just sat there like, it's fine. Nothing's going on here. Nothing to worry about.
love that. Like, for example, if your child is making those random repetitive noises, such as
Oh,
in your
yeah,
face. Sorry, I'm not going to
mate.
do that anymore. I don't want to.
To move away. I physically moved like it was
You
going to
know,
stop. I've got headphones on.
even them
Uh,
screaming, having tantrums or meltdown can cause overstimulation and trigger that fight or flight moment. I mean, apart from, any sort of other things that might be going on that could be triggered in that moment for you. Even repetitive sounds such as, clicking pens, I don't know, scribbling something, that can all
mm,
be, quite overstimulating. So that can be something. It could even be bright lights. So often, flickering lights. I can't deal with
oh,
it
yeah,
at all.
no.
Or fluorescent LED lights. I hate them as well. I need to have warm
Yeah.
lights. So like kind of bright, intense lights, they can all be triggers for overstimulation. Strong smells as well,
Oh,
because people
yeah.
with ADHD usually have quite sensitive sense of smell, and I always said I had a really sensitive nose and I could smell things that other people couldn't. And I
Yes.
mean, at pregnancy along on that, I'm not pregnant right now, but when I was
No. Yeah.
I was
Mine was intense.
it was bad. And that can be so distracting but also overstimulating at the same time. I
Hmm.
mean, add everything on at once together, it's like um
And as a parent, there's a
and
high
there's
chance you will experience all of that
all of that
together.
together. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
most
You
days.
yeah. Or
But
even
having
even if
children is
it's
lovely.
yeah,
I
it
feel like that
is.
was really depressing the way I said it, but
No,
it's just something
absolutely.
to be,
Tactile
it happens.
overstimulation also
Yeah.
happens, with certain materials, textures, or even repetitive touch, can be even become a little bit painful touch, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Or you can feel that kind of touched out feeling as well,
Yeah.
which I know often parents are quite prone to. Um, crowded spacing, and very interestingly, multitasking can also cause overstimulation. That's
Oh,
why I
yes.
always, every time I try or I have to multitask, I feel overstimulated afterwards. I get headaches, I get tense, I'm like frazzled.
I'm
So,
physically drained.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the
I've
question
had to
is,
learn. Oh, sorry, I've just
yeah, no,
interrupted
no,
you.
you say,
I was just going to say quickly, I've had to learn if I need to do something that's an important task on my
mm,
phone or my laptop, just go away from anyone else. Don't try and do it in the same room because
oh my
it's
God,
not
no.
fair on them because they're just being children and your family. But
Yeah,
I used to be snappy, like, guys, can we just chill out a little bit? And I'm like, I'm the one who's made the choice to do that in that room. Like, if I take
yeah.
myself out of it, and you just have to make those accommodations for
I
yourself.
working whilst looking after my child is a recipe for overstimulation and me
Yeah,
snapping and then feeling guilty and whatever. I don't know how people do it if they're working from home and have their children at home. I can't. I find it
it's
really, really tricky.
I basically have a 2-hour window where max naps where I can get most stuff done, but
Mm,
not everything. And it's really, really hard. It's also just trying to find the time to do what you
absolutely.
enjoy.
So on that note, there are some things that you can do like a sensory reset. You can have fidget toys. You can try and also even plan for
Got
for
mine.
little yes, for little like sensory breaks. If you have someone who can support you in enabling you to take some sort of frequent breaks, that can be really helpful, but make sure you're not on those breaks on your phone or something else, because that's
Mm,
extra stimulation. um, then also, trying to reduce background noise as much as possible. If you have TV on, if you have music on, turn that down or pause it or whatever, because that can like really contribute to difficulties. I also, my favorite one is dance it out.
yes.
Because overstimulation is that kind of pent up energy that has to be let
Hmm.
out somehow. Often, sometimes you can breathe through it and kind of do some mindfulness strategies, which is another thing that I can highly recommend. But sometimes you also just have that pent up energy. If it's like reached a
Mm.
certain level, you just have to kind of get it out. And the nice like double win is, your children will probably most likely join
Yeah,
in
they will. I
and they'll
have a
get their
really good
energy out.
recommendation for that
Hmm.
is for the parents is Danny Go on YouTube. He creates really fun songs for children to encourage them to get up and dance. And 9 times
Yay.
out of 10, I get up and dance too.
I'll
Really
have to look
good.
that
He even
up.
adds a bit of drum and bass into it, but like really
Nice.
like subtle. And genuinely, I think you'd really like him, Cherry. And Milo, if he's having a dysregulated day, stick Danny Go
Mm,
on and 5 minutes after he's up and moving, and it really helps. So that's a really good tip, hopefully that can help
absolutely.
people. It's on YouTube, you just subscribe to him, you don't have to pay anything, and it just gets
Yeah.
them off the sofa and you shaking it out and getting all that pent up energy out.
Yeah. Sometimes even, stuff like aromatherapy can be helpful if you're
Yeah.
not overwhelmed by strong smells, obviously.
Mm.
Um, or trying to get into the nature, get out of the house, some fresh air can do wonders. But I know sometimes getting out of the house itself can be really
Oh
overwhelming.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's always worth it.
Even
So
just
I hope,
sometimes for me, just sitting out the window, not
yeah.
out the window, that would be dangerous, but opening the window and kind of just breathing in some fresh air when I'm overstimulated,
Yeah.
that helps too. It's just a bit of a
Yeah.
different sense that.
Absolutely. Weighted blankets, highly recommend. Or singing, for
Yes.
example, humming,
Cold
making up
water.
songs, cold water, yeah, little cold showers,
Just, yeah.
even holding a fan in front of your face, or there's like some tapping of certain
Yeah.
spots on your body can be also quite great for getting out of fight or flight. Anything like that. Chewing on ice
Yeah.
if you can,
Oh, yeah.
if you don't
That's an
have,
easy one to do.
yeah,
That if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's not too much spoons to
absolutely.
help yourself a little bit better. I think
And I
this
think,
is, it's a big thing that a lot of people struggle with. So having these little easy things that you do quickly to help you get out of it is really, really important.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope that that has helped you. And in the next episode, we'll actually talk a little bit more about self-care and establishing some routines and why routines can be really difficult for people with ADHD. So make sure that you tune in. And I hope
Yay.
you found this episode helpful, validating, and, yeah,
And
nice to listen to.
we've done really well because we've actually kept it to under 35 minutes for the
Yes.
first time ever.
I'm sorry, I'm so chuffed.
We'll catch you again on the next episode, guys. Thank you so
And
much for all the support
absolutely.
recently. We love that you're loving it so much. It means the most to us. So
It keeps us
yeah,
going and it always, always makes us smile and
it
super
really
happy.
does. So see you next episode.
Bye bye.
Bye.